Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Cook. I am the Associate Director with the AmeriCorps Seniors. Welcome to today's session, a guided tour of Notice of Funding Opportunities for the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, as well as for the FGP SCP Replacement opportunity that's now open. I will be covering a number of items. First, we'll go over the competition basics for both of these programs, provide you with some key resources, and then do a very quick tour of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Both of these funding opportunities kind of follow the same stream and structure. So I'm going to do them together. Yeah, so I'm going to turn off the camera now because I'm going to want to make sure that you are providing full attention to the slides.
All right, thanks, Linda. And my name is Callan Evans, and I am the ARP Training and Knowledge Management Specialist. I want to actually just introduce a couple of the poll questions that we have here just to get to know who we have on our call today. So the question is, how would you describe the primary field of your organization? Is it aging, volunteerism, community development, faith-based organizations, higher education, state, county, municipal, or other local government, or something else? So we'll give you just a couple of moments for you to complete this first poll. So far, it looks like the majority of you have the primary field of your organization be aging, and then something else. So looks like this responses are slowing down just a bit. And if there is something else that you are focused on, please feel free to use the chat to identify, what else you're focusing on. So we can go ahead and close out this poll. And we'll share the results. And so as you can see, we have 38% focused on something else and 23% focusing on aging. So thank you for participating in the poll. We have one more coming up after this. So we can go ahead and stop sharing that poll and bring up the next one.
Kaylin, that poll was attached, so they just scroll down and you'll see the second one was connected and they answered that one also.
Oh, thank you for that. All right, so as you can see, we did have a webinar that was yesterday. It looks like 68% of you attended that webinar, so thank you for joining us yesterday. All right, and with that, I will turn things back over to Linda to review the competition basics.
Thanks, Colin, appreciate it. So before I start, I want to give one caveat about questions. When we get to the questions and answer phase, or as folks are putting questions in the Q&A, because this is a competition, there are a few questions I cannot answer. If your question is specific or requires a lot of context and discussion, we cannot address that today. We want to make sure everyone gets all the information they need. If that's the case, you can always feel free to send your questions to the American Rescue SDP at cns.gov or the 2022 FGP SCP Expansion at cns.gov. And both of those addresses will be referenced a lot throughout the slides, and they will also be provided to you in the chat. AmeriCorps, formerly known as the Corporation for National and Community Service, is the federal agency responsible for civic engagement. That means we lead civic engagement through service and volunteerism, through grant-making efforts and national days of service in the United States. We help millions of Americans improve their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens through service. We do that mostly by working hand in hand with local partners to tap the ingenuity and can-do spirit of the American people to tackle our country's most pressing challenges. Our mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteerism. National service is an opportunity to volunteer your time and talent to make a difference in people's lives and to get things done for America. Through AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps seniors, individuals of any age can serve our country and their community by putting their valuable skills to use. As was mentioned during the webinar yesterday, the Senior Demonstration Programming, or SDP, allows us to expand our program reach in a way that's different from our standard 3 programs. For example, an SDP program may have seniors serving kids with exceptional needs, as well as their parents, by providing parenting tips or homework assistant tips. As was stated in the webinar yesterday, the Senior Demonstration Authority, which governs the Senior Demonstration Program, allows us to fund innovative programming. The expectation is that the activities will be carried out by seniors, but the program has a new innovative twist to demonstrate the power of senior volunteers to make significant contributions in their communities as they recover and reopen after the COVID-19 pandemic, or as they're seeking to replace FGP SCP programs that are no longer serving in communities. As mentioned before, if there are questions regarding the FGP SCP replacement opportunity, there is the email address noted there, as well as the direct link to the FGP SCP replacement opportunity funding notice. So I will cover both of them today. A lot of my time will be spent on the American Rescue Plan SCP program, but I'm going to incorporate FGP SCP when I can. Before we begin, and as a reminder, here's the schedule for upcoming training sessions. These sessions are designed to give you information to assist in increasing your knowledge of our programs, best practices, and how to respond to requests for funding. As we stated yesterday, we're going to provide some basic facts about both of these competitions. We are accepting applications now for the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, as well as the FGP SCP Expansion opportunity. Both of these funding announcements were released on the same day of November 1st. Both of them have application instructions posted online on our website. Applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on February the 3rd, 2022. So the AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program notice opened on November 1st. It is our call for new applicants or organizations who do not have a current grant with AmeriCorps Seniors to respond to community-based needs illuminated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are looking for efforts to help local communities recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as we are interested in applications that establish or support education, vaccination, and vaccination education efforts, particularly in hard to reach communities. We also looking for applications that actively engage in removing structural racial inequities, advance racial equity, and increase opportunity to achieve sustainable change in communities. Finally, applicants may propose programming in any county, city, or town. Applicants are encouraged to propose programming in the priority areas that are established in Appendix A, the list of priority areas. For the funding opportunity, AmeriCorps Seniors is programming our ARP funding in accordance with Section 231 of the DVSA, which authorizes the Director of AmeriCorps Seniors to make grants to public and nonprofit organizations for the purpose of demonstrating innovative activities involving older Americans as volunteers, and for testing whether older American volunteer programs may contribute to new objectives or certain national priorities. By exercising this authority, AmeriCorps Seniors can encourage innovation as communities recover and build back better. Unlike other AmeriCorps Seniors funding opportunities, this opportunity is open for anywhere in the country. We have an Appendix A for this competition that provides a list of areas where AmeriCorps Seniors is prioritizing funding. However, all applications submitted for any area of the country are available for funding through this opportunity. Now we'll walk through a few key resources for both of these competitions. On the screen is a screenshot of the notice for the AmeriCorps Seniors American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program. Most of the answers to any questions that you may have regarding what's in the notice, what's the priority, what area should we look for, is there a funding limit? All of these questions are in the notice of funding opportunity. This is your gateway to the competition. I recognize the print on this slide is small, but we wanted to show you all the funding opportunity page as it's currently on our website. The funding opportunity for the FGP SCP Expansion is in a similar format as this ARP Senior Demonstration Program, where there's a link to the notice, application instructions, relevant appendices, and important dates. Some of the key resources which will be important to you for both of these competitions are outlined as following. There's a link for the notice of funding opportunity. Again, that establishes the competition, application requirements, evaluation criteria, funding priorities, and more. So you want to start your review here with this at the NOFO link for both ARP as well as for the FGP SCP Expansion competition. Application instructions will give you step-by-step guide to navigating in eGrants, which is our electronic grants management system. Appendix A will note any geographic service areas. For the FGP SCP Expansion, there are specific geographic service areas which we are looking to fund. For the ARP SDP competition, again, it can be anywhere in the country. However, we have developed an Appendix A that lists priority funding specifically because there are no existing AmeriCorps Seniors programming present in that area, as well as these communities have been identified through our census review as having high poverty areas. Appendix B will always list performance measurement requirements. As a part of receiving these federal funds, all of our grantees are required to be able to demonstrate specific outputs, outcomes throughout the use of their programming. And so you will also be required to report on where you are with meeting those national performance measures. You'll also find a technical assistance link on the NOFO pages that lists the webinars that are offered, as well as frequently asked questions for both of these competitions. As we get questions, all of that information will be posted. The FAQs are updated periodically with the questions that we receive. Okay, so now we're going to do just a quick walkthrough of the notice. Some of the priorities for the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program. The notice, all of this comes from the notice directly. Applicants must demonstrate how they will engage adults aged 55 and older to address one or more of the American Rescue Plan priorities. And those are noted there. To establish and support programs in hard to reach communities and or those disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, to support communities historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely impacted by persistent poverty and inequity. We also are looking for programs that are focusing on the education loss that may have occurred as a result of last year's, when the schools were closed or when the schools were dealing with remote learning. So any learning loss as a result of that, or any loss during summer programs. Applicants can propose projects along those lines, as well as health and wellness, both mental and physical. Next slide, please. So again, specifically for the ARP SDP program, we're looking for efforts to help communities, efforts that really focus on helping communities recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. As was stated in the previous slide, efforts to establish or support education, vaccination education, particularly in hard to reach communities, or deal with a financial or job loss, education learning loss, or community defined need that has increased or was born out of the result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is the sole intent around the ARP Senior Demonstration Program effort. We're also wanting to make sure that our applicants describe how they seek to remove structural racial inequities. A lot of this was, as I'm sure most of you know, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, it really shined a light, if you will, on a lot of the racial and economic inequities as it relates to how some communities were hit harder than others as a result of the pandemic. So this is our attempt to help do a little bit of bridge building around that. We are also asking programs, really you can provide a program to address COVID-19 recovery anywhere in the United States or in the communities and U.S. territories that we have identified on Appendix A. So I'm going to state that again. Applicants may propose programming anywhere in the United States or specifically in the communities and the U.S. territories that are listed on Appendix A, list the priority areas. The notice goes in some detail about the volunteers and the intended outcomes of their service that must be present in the narratives. I'm not going to spend time reading through all of these, but I do want to call your attention to it in the notice. Again, we expect that there are outcome-based performance measures, and there are specific budget requirements that are outlined here. If you are proposing to provide a stipend for the volunteers, there's a formula for your use of $7,500 per one VSY or volunteer service year. If you are proposing a program where the volunteers will not receive a stipend, the formula there would be $1,000 of federal funding per unduplicated volunteer. The notice goes into great detail about how you would calculate your budgets around this. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that today, but I do want to make sure that you pay particular attention to those two areas. The notice also provides some information about the planning period for the American Rescue Plan SDP program. You do have, this is a new and unique opportunity of developing, including in your project plan, a 6-month period of planning, a planning period, if you will, in your application. These grants will be awarded for 2 years of funding. And so you will have 2 years to actually implement your program. And the notice provides an opportunity for you, if you wish, to include within that 2 years a 6-month planning period. Or if you're ready to hit the ground running, you will have, the full 24 months to implement your program. There are specific narrative sections in the application that the notice talks about. You want to pay particularly close attention to those criteria and to those different sections as you're developing your application. The notice for the American Rescue Plan SDP program, you'll see that there is a range in terms of dollar amounts for projects. We expect to make awards in the range of $100,000 to $500,000. Again, the performance period and the budget period is a 2-year. All the performance measure targets should reflect your 2-year goals. And the performance period for this program, all programs should be expected to start July 1st of 2022 and finish your program in June 30th, 2024. The NOFO for the American Rescue Plan also talks about a match requirement. All applicants are required to have a 10% match, regardless of whether or not you will place volunteers with a stipend or no stipend. There are page limits. You are encouraged to develop your application in a Word document to make sure that the page limit does not go over 15 pages. 15 pages double spaced. And that is what you would enter into eGrants. The page limit does not include the cover sheet, which is, you'll see once you start your application in eGrants, the executive summary. There's a specific template that you have to follow for the executive summary. That's also highlighted in the notice. The program design, organizational capability, cost effectiveness, and budget adequacy and other narratives are all considered parts of your application and are included in that 15-page count limit. The budget, there's also a budget screen and a budget narrative. Those pages are not included in the 15, and there's also a section on the performance measures. Performance measure sections are also not included. The deadline for submission of the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program is February the 3rd, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We strongly encourage you to create, if you don't have one already, an eGrants account, and to begin your application at least 3 weeks before the deadline. You should draft your application as a Word document and then copy and paste it in the appropriate eGrants fields. Because eGrants has a tendency to be a little bit temperamental at times, you do not want to wait to the last minute to create your application and try to submit it. We strongly encourage folks to start that process at the very least 3 weeks before the deadline. Sooner than that, if you're able to do so. There are also 2 documents that will be required that you will be sending separately. Those 2 documents are outlined in the notice. One of them is a diversity survey, and the other is a financial management survey that you will be required to submit. The notice goes into great detail about the process for late applications. If on the last day that you're trying to submit your application and you're having problems, or as you're looking to submit your application and you encounter any problems before the deadline, you are instructed to contact our eGrants help desk and receive a ticket number. So you want to make sure that you pay extremely close attention to the late application section of the notice to make sure that you're in compliance for that. I'm just going to cover what's different regarding the FGP SCP replacement opportunity. Those priorities, again, we are seeking to fund specific FGP SCP programs in communities where we lost programming. And so the Appendix A for the FGP SCP replacement opportunity, those communities that are identified on Appendix A are the only communities that you can apply, that your grant application should address. Both for, obviously for both this, for the FGP and the SCP replacement, volunteers have to be over the age of 55. And for the SCP program, those volunteers are helping seniors to live independently in their homes. For the FGP program, excuse me, volunteers over the age of 55 are serving school-age children, either kindergarten or school-age children who have been identified as in need of special help. Many of those volunteers are placed either at Head Start communities or in school sites. So you want to make sure that that you have arrangement with those partners to ensure placement in those locations. Grant applications may propose to serve in more than one open geographic service area that's listed on Appendix A. You would do that in one application rather than submitting multiple applications. And then there's an example there. For example, if you wanted to propose to serve in one open geographic service area, for example, the ABC County in Florida, then then that would be your geographic service area that you're noting in the e-grants. However, if you want to serve in ABC County, another county, XYZ, then you would include both of those service locations in your one application. So I think we're at the third and final phase of our presentation. We're going to have a quick poll before we open it up for questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Colin.
All right, thanks, Linda. Yes, we do have 2 more poll questions that are coming up, and these are all listed on the same. So you scroll down to answer the first one in a second. So just a quick check, knowledge check, which is applications are due. Is it December 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. my local time zone, December 30th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Eastern, February 3rd, 2022 at 5 p.m. my local time zone, or February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern? So that is the first question. And I can see that the majority of y'all are selecting February 3rd, 2022, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern, which is correct. And then if you have questions, you can send them to American Rescue SCP at cns.gov, your AmeriCorps portfolio manager near you, me, please don't send them to me, or the CEO of AmeriCorps or the director of AmeriCorps. And 97% of you are saying the correct one, American Rescue SCP at cns.gov. So we can go ahead and end that poll, or those polls. Just so that you can see the correct answer in terms of deadlines. So thank you all for participating in both the first and second sets of polls. Now we are going to open the floor for questions. So as a reminder, if you can please use the Q&A feature to submit questions. It just helps us keep track of the questions that you've submitted. All right, Linda, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so we have several questions that have come in, so we can just kind of lump your response together for those about if it's a cash match or if it can be in kind.
The notice speaks to the cash match, so you want to pay attention to that. But it is cash or in kind or a combination of both.
All right, and then we have a couple of questions about the planning period. So I wonder if we can get those answered, or at least directed to where it is in the NOFO, asking if the 6-month planning period is in addition to the 2 years that begins on 7/1/2022.
No, the planning period is inclusive of the 2-year period. So if you had a 6-month planning period, then you're left with an 18-month program implementation.
All right, thank you. And we also have a lot of questions about Appendix A. We can drop a direct link to the Appendix A for the ARP SCP program into the chat as well. But if you can, Linda, clarify between Appendix A for the ARP SCP program compared to Appendix A for the FGP SCP expansion.
Sure. The Appendix A for ARP Senior Demonstration Program identifies communities where we know there are no AmeriCorps senior programming, as well as have been identified from our census review of being a high poverty area. So we are very interested in receiving applications that address those communities. However, for the American Rescue Plan demonstration program, you do not have to only select those locations that are on Appendix A. You can propose programming in any part of the United States. Appendix A, again, for the American Rescue Plan Senior Demonstration Program, are areas that we know we don't have programming in, as well as they have a high poverty rate. So we are interested in receiving applications from those communities. However, you can propose programming anywhere in the United States. For the FGP SCP Expansion, you may only apply for the locations, for the counties, the cities that are on Appendix A. You can't propose funding a program anywhere else other than what's on Appendix A.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully that clarifies everything. And I apologize, I said expansion, it's the replacement. So excuse me
No,
for
that's
that
okay.
misspeak. So there's a lot of questions also about the stipend. Looks like, is the stipend to pay for volunteers assumed to be in the grant, i.e. and ask for $100,000 includes the stipend paid out to the volunteers?
Yes, it does. Stipends can be included in the grant, or that can be considered a part of the match that the grantee proposes. I think I saw a question about what's the difference between stipend and a non-stipended. So a stipended volunteer is a volunteer who receives a stipend. It's not a salary, it's just a stipend or a small amount of money to help offset some of the expenses they may incur as they are volunteering. It is provided by the grantee, or the grantee has an arrangement with the partnering organizations that they're going to be placing volunteers with to handle the payment of stipends to the volunteers that are placed there. Non-stipended volunteers are volunteers who generally, like our RSVP program, they are individuals who don't receive a stipend. They're serving a limited amount of time. Like they might just be doing an hour or two at their placement sites, versus the other members who are receiving a stipend are serving at least 20 hours of their time at the placement location. For FGP SCP Replacement, your only option if you're applying for one of those grants is a stipend option. You cannot request non-stipended positions for FGP SCP expansion.
All right, thank you. We're also getting questions about remote access. So one of them is, for the RSVP program, are there any restrictions on members working remotely?
No, there is not. I mean, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and I realize that a lot of program structures may have changed to allow volunteers to serve in a safe manner. So programs may propose remote opportunities, in-person opportunities, It's really left up to you, depending on, what's going on in your community, what's the level of infection rates that's going on, the vaccination rates. I mean, all of those could be factors as you're thinking about how you want to exactly structure your program.
And then we have a question about new organizations. So maybe just a quick comment on new organizations for the ARP SDP program compared to existing organizations for the FGP SCP.
Sure. The ARP SDP competition, we are looking for, and it's also stated in the notice, we're looking for organizations that do not have a current grant with AmeriCorps seniors. So you may have had a grant in the past, but that grant is closed. Then this is an opportunity for you to apply. As well as if you are totally new to our agency, never received funds from us, then this is an opportunity for you to apply. That is the pool of applicants that we're looking for this competition. We just recently closed the competition that was only open for current grantees to apply for ARP funds. So this specific notice that we have open right now, we're looking for applicants that are new to us, never received any money from us before, or they received money from us in the past, but they don't have a current grant with us. For FGP SCP, it can be anyone who has never received money from us, has a current grant, or had a grant from us in the past. It's completely open.
All right, thank you. And this came up yesterday, but I think maybe it'd be helpful to repeat it as well, since there's a lot of questions on new versus existing grantees.
Mm-hmm.
The question is there a place you can go to locate areas that have an AmeriCorps program?
Yes, we have, there's several ways for you to identify if there's a AmeriCorps Seniors program that exists in your community. One is the Pathfinder, which is a location that's on our main AmeriCorps.gov website. Through that search, you can pull up, you can identify what programs are operating in your area. There's also a list of organizations that have received recent grants from us that's located on our press and communications page on our AmeriCorps.gov website. You can determine locations that way as well. Or you can reach out to the regional offices. There are regional offices that exist, or you can send an email to one of those, the American Rescue SDP, or to the FGP competition. We'll also respond from those email boxes as well.
All right, and then there's a request asking for clarification of eligibility. Does it matter if they're a for-profit or nonprofit organization?
You have to be a nonprofit organization. The NOFO also lists other eligibility requirements, like you can be a state agency, a 501c3, an Indian tribe. So you want to pay attention to both of the notices. They provide examples of eligibility.
And there's a question about the funding opportunities, if they'll be eligible for renewal after grant period ends. Perhaps we should respond for, if we can, the ARP versus the SGP SCP.
We'll add that to an FAQ. That's not something that I feel like I can adequately answer today. We'll add that to the FAQ.
All right, perfect. And since you mentioned the FAQ, if you go to either of the links that we provided for the funding opportunities, there is a link for not only the NOFO, but the Appendix A, and then as well as the FAQs that are there. Let's see what else is coming in. There's a question about unduplicated senior volunteers, asking how you know if they're already part of the AmeriCorps senior program in their communities.
How do you know? We're looking for programs to be able to determine that for us. We use our reports. We use the information that grantees provide to us to report to Congress the outcomes of all of our programs, and programs, they have a sense of who their volunteers are. They can ask the volunteers if they're serving in any other programs, so that we can flag that for reporting purposes. But basically it is up to the program to determine that volunteers, that they're unduplicated volunteers. And that just basically means that you're not counting the same person twice to do the same thing.
All right. And then there's a couple of questions about like allowable versus not allowable program expenses. That's included in the NOFO, correct, Linda?
Yep.
Yeah,
I want to refer folks to the NOFO for that.
All right. Again, we're still getting some questions about Appendix A, asking why some of the counties are bolded.
For?
It doesn't say if it's for which program. I'm actually looking, it's for the ARP SDP one, that there are a couple of the priority counties that are bolded. And it looks like these are just updates. So I'm looking at the very top, it just says updated to include additional states and counties to meet it. So
yep, thanks, Kaylin.
Yeah, that explains it.
I was going to say, I don't think any of them should be bolded, but if there were changes that were made to the Appendix A, it would be signified that way. And it just means they would just add it to Appendix A.
All right, there's a question about if this opportunity is going to be available annually or just a one-time RFP.
I don't know. I can't speak to the future. The American Rescue Plan provides funding through 2024 for the FGP SCP Expansion. Those opportunities are only made available when we have an existing grantee that has to relinquish or close down for a number of reasons, for whatever reason. And we want to ensure that service continues in some fashion in those communities. So that's how those locations are determined for the FGP SCP replacement opportunity. So if someone, if a program ceased to exist and then it's listed in our next NOFO, if we don't have folks that relinquish, then there's no opportunity that we will be able to post. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I was rambling there for a second.
Yeah, so pretty much it's not known because you can't predict the future.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. There's also a couple of questions coming in about if they're trying to serve multiple counties in one state, do they need to submit one application for the state or multiple applications?
One application. And I'm assuming that it's one application both for ARP and for FGP SCP. I think 2 years ago, we had a competition where people had to submit multiple applications, and it truly wasn't one of our best practice moments. So we are looking to kind of reduce the burden from applicants. So we're requesting one application. But for future reference, the notice will always outline if it's a single application or multiple applications that have to be submitted.
All right, and then this is just another point of clarification. This is for the ARP SDP program. If you request $100,000, is this for the entire 2-year period or is it per year?
You are requesting your 2-year budget.
Okay, and then this is a bit similar to that 6-month planning period, but just kind of goes into a little bit more detail, just so we can kind of make sure everyone's on the same page. It's funding for the project planning period, also subject to the volunteer service year VSY dollar ratio of the 1,000 for non-stipended or 7,500 for stipended. If we have a planning period, do we need to catch up on volunteer mobilization later in the grant period?
Yes, it's all determined on how you outline your performance for those volunteers. So you will have a period of time where you don't have any volunteers placed, and then after that you will have volunteers that are placed if they're receiving a stipend. So all of that should be explained in your budget narrative, as well as in the budget itself. So I feel like I'm not answering that question directly, but and generally you want to follow what's in the notice. We won't be expecting, if you have a planning period, we won't be expecting volunteers to be serving during that time. So if there is, some justification that needs to be made for VSY, we'll be able to do that. But please make sure the notice addresses that, how to handle the 6-month planning period. So please make sure you take a look at that in the notice.
And then there's a question about if the nonprofit has to be physically located in the areas that they will be receiving. I know we talked a little bit about remote support, but this is one that's not physically located in the area serviced.
So if the nonprofit's not in the state that's proposed to be served?
Correct.
That's perfectly fine. I'm assuming that nonprofit has partners and will be able to describe in their application the role and placement of volunteers and the role of service locations. But do they have to be in the same place? Does the agency that receives the grant have to be in the same state? The answer to that is no.
All right, let's see, we have about 3 more minutes left, so we should be able to get through a couple more questions. One of them, well, they're asking how many applicants we're anticipating.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate. I won't know until 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on February the 3rd.
Exactly. Let's see, and I'm not sure if we can answer this, is can a current board member also be an AmeriCorps volunteer?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how that's specific to the program. So that sounds like a question that could either go to the email mailbox, or if you're an existing program, to your portfolio manager.
All right, thank you. I definitely think it's important to kind of note that, I know that there's a lot of questions that are coming in that we can't quite answer, and we do have that email, and then as well as the portfolio managers that can assist if you're a current grantee.
Yep. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated in today's training and for, for signing up and showing up. I hope that you have gained some new information as it relates to these two funding opportunities, the ARP Senior Demonstration Program, as well as the FGP SCP Expansion Competition. If there are questions that you have that were not addressed today or we didn't get a chance to, please feel free to, as Colin stated, send an email to American Rescue SDP@cns.gov, or if it's specific to the FGP SCP expansion, you would send it to 2022 FGP SCP Expansion @cns.gov. Let's see, you want to wrap up with one more question if you have it?
I think that we've covered a good amount of the questions that came in that we're able to cover in today's webinar.
Okay.
Again, just as a reminder, a lot of this can be answered in the NOFO. And then, actually, there's one, if you can give a quick preview of tomorrow's webinar. Or just the topic of it.
Yeah, I think that the topic is, it would give some examples of our SDP programs that currently exist, just to kind of give you a little bit more of a flavor of some of the work and the evaluation that's been done for the SDP programming.
Perfect. And Linda, there was a question about where they can find additional examples. So it seems like tomorrow's webinar would be the place for that.
Yeah, and it's not going to be specific to ARP. It will be just in general. And all of these webinars will be recorded, so folks have the opportunity to go back and look at them later or look at them for the first time. So with that, I want to thank everyone's participation for today. I hope that we've been able to answer your questions. Hope everyone stays safe during this uncertain time. And thank you very much. Have a good day.